They thought we were finished.
Two old fools with nothing left.
My own son looked me in the eye and said, "You're obsolete, Dad."
His wife laughed when they changed the locks.
But here's the thing about old fools.
We've been playing chess while they were learning checkers.
So let me tell you how we took back everything.
And taught them the most expensive lesson of their lives.
My name is Arthur Blackwood, and this beautiful woman beside me is my wife of 48 years, Margaret. People call her Maggie. We built Blackwood Industrial Solutions from absolutely nothing back in 1978. Started in a garage with a $5,000 loan and a prayer. By 2020, we were doing $32 million in annual revenue. Not bad for a kid from Pittsburgh who barely finished high school, right?
Arthur's being modest, as usual. He was the vision, but I handled every contract, every negotiation, every relationship with our clients. We were a team. Always have been. People don't understand that anymore. They think business is about one genius at the top. But the strongest companies are built by partnerships, by people who trust each other completely. We had that. We had something real.
Our son, Michael, grew up watching us work 16-hour days. He had everything we never had: private schools, tennis lessons, trips to Europe. We thought we were giving him a better life. What we actually gave him was a sense of entitlement that would nearly destroy us. He joined the company in 2015 after business school. MBA from Cornell. We were so damn proud.
I remember the day he brought Victoria home. That's his wife. She wore a Chanel suit to Sunday dinner and barely touched my pot roast. Smiled with her mouth but not her eyes, you know what I mean? I told Arthur that night, something's wrong with that girl. He said I was being overprotective. Maybe I was. But a mother knows.
Michael changed after he married her. Stopped asking for advice, started questioning every decision Maggie and I made. He'd sit in board meetings, our own company, and contradict me in front of employees. Victoria would whisper in his ear, and suddenly he'd be demanding we modernize, or pivot to younger demographics. Code for pushing us out.
The real trouble started in early 2023. Arthur had a mild heart attack, nothing serious, thank God, but it scared us. We were 71 and 69. We'd been talking about retirement anyway, about traveling and spending time with grandchildren we barely knew because we'd worked so hard. So we made a decision.
We decided to transition the company to Michael over 2 years. A gradual handoff. We'd stay on as consultants, help him navigate relationships with our oldest clients, teach him the institutional knowledge you can't learn in business school. Seemed logical. He was our son. We trusted him. That was our first mistake.
The second mistake was believing Victoria when she said, "We'll take such good care of you both. You've earned your rest." She had this way of saying things that sounded sweet but felt poisonous. I should have listened to my gut. But you want to believe in your family, don't you? You want to think your own child wouldn't betray you.
Within 6 months, Michael had moved us out of our offices. "To give you peace and quiet," he said. Stopped inviting us to board meetings. Stopped returning calls. When I showed up unannounced to check on a major client negotiation, security stopped me at the door. Security? At my own goddamn company. The guard looked embarrassed and said, "Mr. Michael Blackwood has issued new protocols, sir."
I'll never forget the day we got the letter. Certified mail. Our own son, through his lawyer, informing us that we were being removed from the company entirely. No consulting role. No board seats. They were buying us out at a valuation so low it was insulting. $23 million for a company worth at least $80 million. The letter said we had 30 days to accept or face protracted litigation.
That night, Maggie and I sat in our living room, the house we'd lived in for 35 years, and realized we were in serious trouble. We'd put Michael's name on most of our assets during estate planning 5 years earlier to avoid taxes. The house, the investment accounts, even our life insurance policies listed him as owner or beneficiary. Our lawyer had assured us It was standard practice for wealth transfer. What he didn't tell us was how vulnerable it made us.
Victoria called me 2 days later. I remember I was making tea when the phone rang. She didn't even say hello. Just, Margaret, we need you and Arthur out of the house by the end of the month. Michael's decided to sell it. It's worth almost $4 million now, and we need the capital for business expansion. You understand? I dropped the teacup. It shattered on the kitchen floor.
I got on the phone and told her exactly what I thought of her and my son. She laughed and said, "Arthur, you're not thinking clearly. Maybe it's early dementia. Michael's worried about you. We both are. That's why we think it's best if you and Margaret move to a more appropriate living situation. We've found a lovely assisted living facility in Delaware." Assisted living. We were sharp as tacks, both of us.
The next 3 weeks were a nightmare. Michael wouldn't take our calls. His lawyer sent increasingly threatening letters. They froze our access to joint accounts legally since Michael's name was on everything. We were living on my Social Security check and the $800 we had in an old checking account they didn't know about. At 71 and 69 years old, we were effectively broke.
That's when Maggie said something that changed everything. We were sitting in our bedroom, looking at eviction papers, and she said very quietly, "Arthur, do you remember the Henderson contract?" I looked at her, and then I started to smile. Because yes, I remembered the Henderson contract very, very well.
Let me explain what Michael didn't know because he was too arrogant to learn the actual history of our company. Back in 1982, we were struggling. We'd lost 2 major clients, and we were 30 days from bankruptcy. A man named Gerald Henderson owned a commercial real estate portfolio in Ohio. He was old school, maybe 65 at the time, and he liked us.
Henderson called me into his office and said, "Arthur, I believe in you. I'm going to do something unusual." He offered us a contract to manage the industrial maintenance for his entire portfolio, 37 buildings. But here's the thing. He didn't want to pay us in cash because we needed capital to grow, and he was cash poor himself at the moment. So he paid us in equity.
Gerald gave us a 42% stake in Henderson Property Group as payment for 5 years of service. We signed the contract, did the work, and honestly, we kind of forgot about it. The property company was small then, maybe worth $1 million total. We were focused on building Blackwood Industrial. The Henderson shares just sat in a filing cabinet in our home office.
Fast forward to 2023. Gerald Henderson died in 2019, and his grandson took over Henderson Property Group. The company had grown significantly. And in March 2023, right when Michael was forcing us out, Henderson Property Group went public. Our 42% stake, which we'd literally forgotten about, was suddenly worth $67 million.
But here's the beautiful part. We'd never moved those shares out of our names. They were in a safety deposit box at a bank Michael didn't know about from before we consolidated our finances. Everything else he'd taken from us, but not this. This was ours. And he had absolutely no idea it existed.
We went to see a real lawyer. Not the estate planning guy who'd made us so vulnerable, but a litigation specialist named Patricia Chin. She was 50, sharp as a razor, and she listened to our story for 2 hours without interrupting. When we finished, she leaned back in her chair and said, "Do you want justice or do you want revenge?" Maggie and I looked at each other. We said, "Both."
Patricia explained our options. We could sell the Henderson shares, secure our financial position, and walk away. Live comfortably somewhere else and never speak to Michael again. Or we could do something more strategic. She said, Blackwood Industrial has significant debt. Michael's been borrowing against the company to fund his lifestyle. If you wanted to, you could acquire that debt and become his largest creditor.
It took me about 3 seconds to make that decision. We authorized Patricia to begin quietly purchasing Blackwood Industrial's debt through shell companies. Over 6 weeks, we acquired $8.2 million in loans that Michael had taken out. He'd been living like a king, bought a $6 million house in Connecticut, 2 luxury cars, a boat, all financed against the company he'd stolen from us.
Meanwhile, we moved into a modest 2-bedroom apartment in New Haven. We didn't fight the eviction. We let Michael think he'd won. Victoria sent me a text message that said, "I hope you and Arthur find peace in your new situation." I showed it to Arthur and we laughed until we cried. If she only knew what was coming.
The deadline for the debt payments was September 15th. Michael had been making minimum payments, but Patricia had structured it so that the full $8.2 million came due all at once. 3 days before the deadline, we had our lawyer send a letter to Michael's office informing him that we were now his primary creditors and demanding immediate full payment.
Patricia called us the morning after Michael received our letter. She said, "Margaret, I wish you could have seen his face. He showed up at my office at 7:30 a.m., absolutely panicking. He kept saying, 'This is impossible. How do they have money? Where did they get this?' I just smiled and told him the payment was due in 48 hours.
Michael called me directly for the first time in 4 months. I let it ring 3 times before answering. He didn't even apologize, didn't acknowledge what he'd done. Just launched right in with, 'Dad, we need to talk about this debt situation. There's been a misunderstanding. I can't pay $8 million in 2 days. Be reasonable.' I said, 'Michael, I'm being perfectly reasonable. You stole my company. Now pay your bills.'
He tried every manipulation tactic in the book. Told Arthur he was ruining his grandson's future, like we'd even been allowed to see our grandson in the past year. Said we were being vindictive and cruel. At one point Victoria got on the phone screaming about how we were bitter old people who couldn't accept progress. I quietly hung up.
September 15th came and went. No payment. On September 16th, Patricia filed to force Blackwood Industrial into receivership. In layman's terms, we initiated the process to take control of the company through the courts because Michael had defaulted on his debt. The legal system moves slowly, but it moves. Michael hired 3 different law firms to fight it. Cost him another $2 million in legal fees he didn't have.
Here's what Michael never understood about business. It's not about being the smartest or the most aggressive. It's about relationships, reputation, and timing. Arthur and I had spent 45 years building relationships with judges, lawyers, bankers, and clients. When word got out that Michael Blackwood had forced his elderly parents into poverty and then defaulted on millions in debt, those relationships vanished overnight.
By November, Blackwood Industrial was in free fall. 3 major clients canceled their contracts because they'd been our clients, not Michael's. They'd stayed loyal to the company out of respect for Maggie and me, but when they learned how Michael had treated us, they walked. His revenue dropped 43% in 2 months.
I didn't take any joy in watching the company struggle. That business was our baby. We'd built it with our hands, our sweat, our sleepless nights. But Michael had to learn that actions have consequences. You can't betray the people who gave you everything and expect the universe to reward you for it.
In January 2024, the court ruled in our favor. We were granted control of Blackwood Industrial as primary secured creditors. Michael and Victoria were removed from all positions effective immediately. The judge actually said in his ruling, "The conduct of the defendants toward the plaintiffs, their own parents, demonstrates a staggering lack of basic human decency." That quote made the Wall Street Journal.
Victoria called me sobbing. This was the same woman who'd left when they evicted us. She begged me to have mercy and said they were going to lose everything. I told her, "Victoria, you found us a lovely assisted living facility in Delaware, remember? Maybe they have a family suite available." Then I hung up. Arthur said I was being petty. I told him petty was my new hobby.
We didn't keep the company. We were 72 and 70 at this point. We'd already retired once. Instead, we sold Blackwood Industrial to a competitor for $48 million. After paying off Michael's debts and legal fees, we netted about $37 million. Combined with the Henderson shares, we had over $100 million. Not bad for 2 obsolete old people.
Now, I know what people might be thinking. We destroyed our son's life. We took everything from him. And yes, we did. But let me tell you what happened next, because this is the part that matters.
Michael and Victoria lost their Connecticut mansion, the cars, everything. They filed for bankruptcy in March 2024. Michael had to take a job as a regional manager for a manufacturing firm in Pennsylvania. Salary position, no equity, 50-hour weeks. Victoria, who'd never worked a day in her life, got a job at a real estate agency.
We didn't contact them for 6 months. Let them sit with what they'd done. Let them understand what it felt like to work hard for modest rewards. And then, in September 2024, we sent Michael a letter. Not through lawyers. Just a handwritten note from his mother and father.
The letter said, "Michael, we love you. We always have. But you needed to learn that people aren't disposable, especially the people who gave you life. Your mother and I are getting older. We don't know how many years we have left. If you want a relationship with us, the door is open. But it has to be real. No more manipulation. No more lies. Just honesty."
He didn't respond for 3 weeks. I thought maybe we'd lost him forever. But then one Sunday morning, there was a knock on our apartment door. Arthur opened it, and there was Michael. He looked terrible, exhausted, older, humbled. He stood there in our doorway and said, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." And then he broke down crying.
We invited him in, made coffee, let him talk. He told us everything, how Victoria had pushed him to take control of the company, how she convinced him we were holding him back, how he'd gotten caught up in trying to impress her wealthy friends. He said, "I forgot who I was. I forgot where I came from. I forgot that you two loved me unconditionally."
I asked him about Victoria. He said they were separated. She'd left him the moment the money ran out, filed for divorce, and moved back to her parents' estate in Connecticut. Took their son with her. Michael was living in a 1-bedroom apartment, seeing his son every other weekend. The man had lost everything.
I looked at Maggie. We'd talked about this moment many times. We'd prepared for it. I told Michael, "Son, your mother and I don't need $100 million. We're old. We live simply. What we need is a son who understands the value of integrity and hard work. What we need is a relationship built on truth."
We made him an offer. We would give him $2 million, but with conditions. He had to stay in his current job for at least 2 more years to prove he could build something through effort, not inheritance. He had to attend family therapy with us weekly. And he had to be honest, always, even when the truth was uncomfortable.
He agreed immediately. Didn't even hesitate. We started having Sunday dinners together again, just like when he was a kid. Slowly, over months, we rebuilt trust. It wasn't easy. There were arguments, tears, difficult conversations. But it was real.
Today, Michael is a different man. He's still working that management job. He's dating a schoolteacher named Rachel who's kind and genuine. He sees his son regularly, and we, Arthur and I, we're finally grandparents. Last month, our grandson told me I make the best pot roast he's ever had. I cried happy tears.
We eventually gave Michael $5 million to start his own small business, a consulting firm helping family-owned companies navigate succession planning. He's good at it because he learned the hard way what not to do. The business is growing slowly, sustainably. He works hard. He's humble. He's become the man we always hoped he'd be.
As for Victoria, she remarried quickly, some investment banker twice her age. We don't speak to her, and that's fine. She taught us an important lesson: not everyone in your family deserves access to your life. Blood doesn't automatically equal loyalty.
The house we lost? We bought it back last year at auction for $3.2 million. Michael had let it fall into foreclosure. We renovated it, and now it's our family home again. Michael and his son come for dinner every Sunday. Rachel joins us most weeks. It's loud and messy and full of laughter.
People ask us if we regret what we did, taking everything from Michael, forcing him to rebuild. The answer is no. We don't regret it for a second. Sometimes the greatest act of love is letting someone hit rock bottom so they can learn to climb back up with integrity.
You know what's funny? The business press wrote articles about us. Called it the Blackwood Revenge Saga. Made us sound like we were vindictive monsters who destroyed our own son. But those journalists never asked the right questions. They never asked what kind of son evicts his 70-year-old parents and laughs about it.
We gave interviews to a few publications just to set the record straight. I told one reporter we didn't take revenge. We taught accountability. There's a difference. She looked at me like I was speaking another language. Young people today think consequences are punishment. They're not. Consequences are education.
The Henderson Property Group shares. Those ended up being even more valuable than we thought. The company continued to grow, and by late 2024, our stake was worth $93 million. We established a foundation with $30 million of it. The Blackwood Family Foundation funds programs that help elderly people who've been financially abused by their own children.
You'd be shocked how common it is. We get letters every week from people in their 70s and 80s who trusted their kids with power of attorney or property deeds, only to find themselves homeless or broke. The legal system isn't designed to protect them. So our foundation provides free legal assistance, emergency housing, and financial counseling.
Michael actually works with the foundation now, as a volunteer. Every Saturday morning, he counsels families about estate planning and how to protect themselves. He tells them his story, all of it, the ugly parts included. He says, "I was the villain in my parents' story. Don't let your kids become the villain in yours."
I want to talk about the moment I knew we'd made the right decision. It was about 8 months after Michael came back into our lives. We were having Sunday dinner, pot roast, mashed potatoes, green beans, the whole traditional spread. Michael's son, our grandson Tommy, was 7 years old then.
Tommy asked me, "Grandpa, why don't I have a big house like my friend Jacob?" Michael tensed up immediately. You could see the shame cross his face. But I looked at Tommy and said, "Because your dad is teaching you something more important than having a big house. He's teaching you that happiness comes from working hard and being honest."
Tommy thought about that for a minute, then said, "Is that why you and Grandma are so happy?" I almost started crying right there at the table. This 7-year-old child understood something his father had forgotten for years, that wealth and happiness aren't the same thing.
Michael later told us that moment changed him fundamentally. He said, "I spent 35 years chasing the wrong things. I thought success meant impressing people I didn't even like. Now I measure success by whether my son respects me." That's when we knew, truly knew, that we'd gotten our son back.
The relationship with Michael isn't perfect. There are still difficult days. Sometimes he makes a comment that reveals he's still struggling with ego or entitlement, and we have to address it directly. But that's okay. Growth isn't linear. What matters is that he's trying, genuinely trying, to be better.
Let me tell you about the conversation we had with our estate lawyer last month. We're updating our will. We're 73 and 71 now, and we want everything in order. Michael will inherit a substantial amount, but not everything, and not immediately.
We're leaving the bulk of our estate to the foundation, with Michael as a trustee alongside 2 independent board members. He'll receive $5 million outright and another $10 million in a trust that pays out gradually over 20 years. The rest, roughly $60 million, goes to charity.
When we told Michael about this arrangement, I watched his face carefully. 5 years ago, he would have been furious, would have argued about fairness and family duty. Instead, he nodded slowly and said, "That's more than fair. More than I deserve, honestly. And the foundation is doing important work."
That response told us everything we needed to know. He's learned. He's truly learned. The man who once demanded everything now understands the value of enough. That's not something you can teach through lectures or gentle parenting. Sometimes people only learn through consequences.
Our old business partners reach out occasionally. They want to know if we're angry that we had to sell Blackwood Industrial. They think we must resent losing the company we built. But here's the truth, I don't miss it at all. That company was a chapter in our lives, not our whole story.
What I love about our life now is the simplicity. We wake up when we want. We read books. We travel, not to impress anyone, just to see places we've always wanted to see. Last spring, we spent 3 weeks in Italy. Arthur learned to paint watercolors. I took a cooking class in Tuscany.
We have friends now, real friends, not business contacts who wanted something from us. There's a couple down the hall, Phil and Dorothy, who we play cards with every Thursday. They don't know we're wealthy. They just know we're Arthur and Maggie, two people who laugh a lot and always bring good wine.
People sometimes ask if we feel guilty about what we put Michael through. The bankruptcy, the public humiliation, the loss of his marriage. And I'll be honest, there were nights I couldn't sleep, wondering if we'd been too harsh. But then I remember what he did to us, and more importantly, I see who he is now.
The Michael we have today, humble, hardworking, honest, that person wouldn't exist if we'd just forgiven him and handed everything back. He needed to lose everything to understand what actually mattered. Sometimes love means letting someone fall, so they can learn to stand on their own.
The one thing I do regret is the time we lost. Those months when he was pushing us out, the year after when we didn't speak, we'll never get that time back. I'm 71. Arthur's 73. We don't have unlimited time left together, and we certainly don't have unlimited time with our grandson.
But we're making up for it now. Tommy stays with us every other weekend. We take him to museums, teach him to cook, tell him stories about building the business. Not the dramatic parts, he's only 8 now, but the funny stories, the lessons we learned about persistence and integrity.
Last weekend, Tommy helped me bake cookies. He was measuring flour and he said, very seriously, "Grandma, my dad says you and Grandpa are the smartest people he knows." I asked him why Michael said that. Tommy replied, "Because you taught him that being rich isn't as important as being good."
I wasn't in the room when he said that, but Maggie told me later. I'll admit, I got emotional. Because that's it, isn't it? That's the whole point. We didn't go through hell and back just to prove we were smarter than our son. We did it to save him from becoming someone we couldn't recognize.
Arthur and I talk sometimes about what would have happened if we just accepted the buyout, taken the $23 million and walked away quietly. We would have been comfortable financially, but we would have lost Michael forever. He would have continued down that path of entitlement and cruelty until he destroyed himself completely.
By forcing the confrontation, by taking everything from him, we gave him the opportunity to rebuild himself into someone better. Not someone who inherited wealth and wisdom, but someone who earned both through suffering and growth. That's worth more than any amount of money.
The therapy sessions we do with Michael every week, those have been harder than I expected. Our therapist, Dr. Rosen, she doesn't let anyone hide behind excuses. In one session, about 4 months in, she asked Michael directly, "What was the exact moment you stopped seeing your parents as people and started seeing them as obstacles?"
Michael sat there for a long time, just staring at his hands. Finally, he said, "When Victoria and I went to that country club in Greenwich. Everyone there had inherited money, generational wealth. They talked about their parents like they were ATMs or inconveniences. And I started thinking, why should I wait? Why should I keep asking permission from 2 old people who didn't understand modern business?"
Hearing him say that, calling us 2 old people, even though it was in the past tense, even though he was confessing it with regret, it hurt. Dr. Rosen asked me how I felt. I told her the truth. I felt like I'd failed as a mother. Because somewhere along the way, I raised a son who could look at his father's gray hair and see weakness instead of wisdom.
But Dr. Rosen pushed back on that. She said, "Margaret, you didn't fail. You raised a son in privilege, and privilege is seductive. It convinces people they deserve things they haven't earned. What you did afterward, taking everything back, that was you succeeding as parents. You refused to let him stay in that delusion."
Those words helped me more than she probably knew. Because I had been carrying guilt. I'd been wondering if we'd been too focused on the business when Michael was growing up, if we'd showered him with money instead of values. But the truth is, we taught him values. He just chose to forget them when it became convenient.
There's another part of this story I haven't mentioned yet. Victoria, Michael's ex-wife, she tried to come back into the picture last year. She divorced the investment banker after 8 months. Apparently he was controlling and emotionally abusive, according to her.
She called Michael in tears, said she'd made a terrible mistake leaving him, that she finally understood what they'd had together. She wanted to reconcile. Michael actually considered it for about 48 hours. I watched him war with himself. Part of him still loved her, or loved the memory of who he thought she was.
Maggie and I didn't tell him what to do. We've learned that lesson. You can't live your adult child's life for them. But I did ask him one question. Son, when you were at your lowest point, when you'd lost everything, did Victoria call to see if you were okay? He got very quiet. The answer, of course, was no.
Michael told Victoria no. He said it was one of the hardest things he'd ever done, but also one of the clearest decisions he'd ever made. He told her, "You didn't love me. You loved what you thought I could give you. I'm not that person anymore, and I don't want to be." She didn't take it well.
She actually showed up at our house a week later, demanding to speak to us. Security in our building called up, and I told them to send her away. But Maggie said, "No, let her come up. I want to say something to her." I was worried, but I should have known better. My wife is far more strategic than I give her credit for.
Victoria came to our door in designer clothes, probably borrowed from her mother, with her fake sympathy face on. She said, "Margaret, Arthur, I know we've had our differences, but I was hoping we could talk about Michael. I'm concerned about him. He seems lost." I almost laughed. Almost.
I started to respond, but Maggie held up her hand. She looked at Victoria with this expression I recognized. It's the same look she gave difficult clients who tried to cheat us on contracts. Very calm, very controlled, absolutely terrifying if you knew her well enough.
I said, "Victoria, I'm going to tell you something, and I want you to listen very carefully. Michael is not lost. For the first time in years, he knows exactly where he is and who he is. He's building a life based on integrity and hard work. You wouldn't understand that because you've never built anything in your life. You've only ever taken."
Victoria's face went red. She sputtered something about how dare we judge her, how we were bitter old people who'd poisoned Michael against her. Maggie just smiled, not a warm smile, a sharp one, and said, "We didn't poison him against you. We just stopped enabling his delusion that you were worth keeping."
I told her to leave and not come back. I said, "You had your chance to be part of this family. You chose money over people. Now you have neither, and that's justice." She left crying. Arthur said I was too harsh. I told him some people need to hear harsh truths. He knows I'm right.
Michael's new girlfriend, Rachel, is the complete opposite of Victoria. She's a third-grade teacher, makes $47,000 a year, drives a Honda Civic that's older than some of her students. But she's kind. She's genuine. And when Tommy talks about her, his whole face lights up.
We met her properly about 6 months ago. Michael brought her to Sunday dinner, and you could see he was nervous. She walked in with a pie she baked, apple, homemade crust, and she said, "Mrs. Blackwood, Michael says your pot roast is legendary. I hope my pie can hold its own." I liked her immediately.
During dinner, Rachel asked us about building the business. Not in a financial way. She didn't ask about money or valuation. She asked about the hard parts, the times we wanted to quit, how we supported each other through difficulties. Those are the questions of someone who values character over assets.
At one point, Tommy spilled his milk all over the table. Victoria would have snapped at him, made him feel terrible for the accident. Rachel just laughed, grabbed some napkins, and said, "Good thing milk isn't red wine, right, buddy?" She helped him clean it up without making him feel ashamed. That's when I knew she was the right person for our family.
After dinner, while Michael and Tommy were in the other room, Rachel pulled Maggie in the aside. She said, I know about everything that happened. Michael told me the whole story. I want you to know that I respect what you did. My own father was an alcoholic who refused to get help until my mother left him. Sometimes the people we love need to hit bottom before they can heal.
That conversation with Rachel confirmed something I'd been thinking for months. Michael had finally attracted someone who matched his new values. When you're living for money and status, you attract people who value those things. When you're living for integrity and growth, you attract people who value those instead.
Michael and Rachel got engaged last month. Small proposal, nothing extravagant. He took her to the park where they had their first date and asked with his grandmother's ring, the one I'd given him from my mother. The ring isn't worth more than a few $1,000s, but it has history and meaning. Victoria would have demanded a 5-carat diamond. Rachel cried happy tears over that simple gold band.
The wedding is planned for this fall. They're doing it at a small venue, maybe 80 people, mostly family and close friends. Michael asked Arthur to be his best man. When he asked, he said, "Dad, you're the man I want to be like. Not the man I was, but the man you've always been." Arthur tried not to cry. Failed completely.
I'm not ashamed to admit I wept when he asked. Because for years, I thought I'd lost my son. I thought the boy I'd raised, the one who used to help me in the garage on Saturdays, who asked thoughtful questions about how things worked, I thought that person was gone forever. Getting him back feels like a miracle I don't deserve.
We're paying for the wedding, but we set a budget with Michael's input, $30,000, nice but not extravagant. Rachel's parents are contributing too. It's going to be beautiful and meaningful, the kind of wedding that celebrates love instead of showing off wealth. The kind of wedding Arthur and I had 49 years ago.
I want to talk about the moment everything truly came full circle. It was 3 months ago, February 2025. Michael's consulting business had landed a significant client, a family-owned manufacturing company in New Jersey worth about $40 million. The patriarch was 78, trying to figure out succession planning with 3 children who couldn't agree on anything.
Michael called us and asked if we'd come to a meeting with him and the client. He said, "Dad, Mom, this family needs to hear your story. Not the business advice, they need to understand what happens when succession goes wrong." We agreed immediately. This was what we'd hoped for, Michael using his experience to help others.
The meeting was in the client's factory office. The father, Vincent Romano, sat at the head of the table with his 3 children, all in their 40s and 50s, arguing before we even sat down. One daughter wanted to sell the company. One son wanted to buy out his siblings. The other son wanted to keep it together, but modernize everything immediately.
Vincent looked exhausted, like a man who'd built something beautiful only to watch his children tear it apart fighting over the pieces. Michael introduced us and said, "Mr. Romano, these are my parents. I'd like them to tell you what I did to them and what they did to me. Because if you don't address this now, your family will end up like mine almost did."
I told the story plainly. No embellishment, no self-pity. Just facts. How Michael had pushed us out, stolen the company, evicted us from our home. How we'd been 71 years old and effectively homeless. The Romano children looked increasingly uncomfortable. Their father's face went from tired to furious.
When Arthur finished, I took over. I explained how we'd acquired Michael's debt, forced him into bankruptcy, took everything back. Vincent's oldest son started to protest, saying, "That's revenge, not justice." I looked at him directly and said, "No. Revenge would have been destroying him and walking away. Justice was destroying him and then helping him rebuild into someone better."
Then Michael spoke. He told them about living in a 1-bedroom apartment, working 60-hour weeks for $50,000 a year, losing his wife, and nearly losing his son. He said, "I deserved everything they did to me. And if my parents had just forgiven me and given everything back, I would still be the arrogant, entitled person who hurt them. I wouldn't have my integrity back. I wouldn't have my self-respect."
The room went completely silent. Vincent's daughter, the one who wanted to sell, started crying. She said, "I've been horrible to my father. I called him old-fashioned and out of touch last week." Vincent reached over and squeezed her hand. The son who wanted to buy out his siblings looked at the floor.
Vincent asked us, "How do I protect myself without destroying my relationship with my children?" I told him the truth. You have to be willing to lose the relationship to save your children. If they love you, truly love you, they'll come back better. If they don't, you'll at least have your dignity and security in your final years.
That meeting lasted 4 hours. By the end, the Romano family had agreed to work with Michael on a structured succession plan that protected Vincent's interests while giving the children a path to earn leadership roles over time. Not inherit them, earn them. Michael called us that night and said, "Thank you for being willing to share our story. You saved that family."
The Romano case opened doors for Michael's consulting business. Suddenly, other family business owners wanted his help, specifically because he'd lived through the worst-case scenario from both sides. His revenue doubled in 3 months. He's not wealthy, but he's successful, and more importantly, he's proud of the work he's doing.
Our grandson Tommy is thriving. He's doing well in school, playing soccer, making friends. But more than that, he's developing into a kind, thoughtful child. Last week, he used his allowance to buy flowers for Rachel because she looked sad. That's emotional intelligence you can't teach, you have to model it.
People sometimes recognize us from the Wall Street Journal article or the business podcasts where we've been interviewed. They approach us at restaurants or airports and say, "You're the couple who took down your son." It always sounds so dramatic when they say it that way, like we're villains in a Greek tragedy.
But occasionally, someone approaches us with tears in their eyes and says, "Thank you for telling your story. My mother was financially abused by my brother, and your foundation helped her get legal representation. She has her house back now." Those moments make everything worthwhile. The pain, the conflict, the difficult years, if it helps even one family avoid or escape that nightmare, it matters.
Arthur and I have been thinking about our legacy lately. Not the money, that's already allocated, but what we want people to remember about us. Not that we built a successful company or that we accumulated wealth. We want people to remember that we loved each other, that we stood together even when it would have been easier to fall apart.
Last month was our 49th wedding anniversary. Michael and Rachel organized a surprise party for us, nothing fancy, just family and close friends in our backyard. Tommy made a speech. He's 8 years old, and he stood up in front of everyone and said, "My grandparents taught my dad how to be good. Now my dad is teaching me." That's what families are supposed to do.
I lost it. Completely lost it. Maggie and I just held each other and cried while everyone applauded. Because that's it. That's the legacy. Not the money or the business success. The legacy is a little boy who understands that goodness is taught and character is earned.
We've started writing our memoirs. Not for publication, just for Tommy and any other grandchildren we might have. We want them to know the full story, the struggles, the betrayal, the hard decisions, and ultimately the redemption. We want them to understand that family isn't about blood alone, it's about respect, integrity, and unconditional love paired with conditional tolerance of behavior.
One thing we've learned through all of this: forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or enabling. You can forgive someone while still maintaining boundaries. You can love someone while refusing to let them hurt you. That's not cruelty, that's self-respect. And self-respect is the foundation of every healthy relationship.
Michael still has difficult days. Last Tuesday, he called Arthur upset because a potential client chose a competitor who promised faster results with less accountability. Michael said, "Dad, sometimes I miss when I could just promise people whatever they wanted to hear." Arthur told him, "That's the old you trying to sneak back in. Tell him to go away."
We're planning a big trip for next summer, Michael, Rachel, Tommy, Maggie, and me. We're going to Scotland to visit the village where my great-grandfather was born. Tommy's never been out of the country. Michael wants to show him that there's a whole world beyond the small bubble he grew up in.
Rachel is pregnant. They told us last week. Due in October, right after the wedding. It's a girl. They're naming her Margaret Eleanor, after me and Arthur's mother. When they told me the name, I couldn't speak for a full minute. Just sat there with my hand over my mouth, tears streaming down my face.
I'm going to be a grandfather to a little girl. And she'll grow up knowing her great-grandparents, hearing stories about building businesses and standing up for what's right. She'll know that her grandfather made terrible mistakes, but found his way back through humility and hard work. That's a better inheritance than money.
Arthur and I talk sometimes about what would have happened if we'd died when Michael was in control of everything. If Arthur's heart attack had been fatal, Michael would have inherited our entire estate, Victoria would have spent it all, and our grandson would have grown up thinking that betrayal was normal family behavior.
By surviving, by fighting back, by refusing to be victims, we didn't just save ourselves, we saved Michael and Tommy too. We broke a generational cycle of entitlement and narcissism. That matters more than any amount of money we could leave behind.
It's Sunday afternoon, May 2028. Arthur is 76, I'm 74. We're sitting in our backyard watching Tommy, who's 11 now, play with his baby sister Margaret. She's 2.5, all dark curls and mischief. Rachel is pregnant again, a boy this time, due in August.
Michael's consulting firm now has 6 employees. He's not wealthy, but he's comfortable. More importantly, he comes home every night proud of the work he's done. He helps families avoid the mistakes he made. He teaches business owners that love and boundaries aren't contradictory, they're complementary.
Tommy asked me yesterday, "Grandma, were you scared when Daddy kicked you out of your house?" I told him the truth, terrified. But I had your grandfather, and together we were stronger than the fear. He thought about that and said, "That's why you have to marry your best friend, right?" Exactly right, sweet boy.
The business world has changed so much since we started Blackwood Industrial in 1978. Technology, global markets, everything moves faster now. But the fundamentals haven't changed: integrity, hard work, treating people with dignity. Those principles are timeless. They survived our mistakes, and they'll survive whatever comes next.
We donated another $20 million to the foundation last year. It's now helping elderly people in 43 states. We get letters every week, people who escaped financial abuse, who got their homes back, who reconciled with their children after setting proper boundaries. Each letter reminds us why we fought so hard.
I look at Maggie now, her silver hair catching the afternoon sun, and I think about everything we've survived together. Building a business from nothing. Raising a son. Losing everything. Fighting to get our dignity back. Rebuilding our family. 49 years of partnership, and she's still the smartest person I know.
Arthur says I'm the smart one, but he's the strong one. When I wanted to give up, and there were days I did, he reminded me who we were and what we stood for. Marriage isn't about one person being the hero. It's about taking turns holding each other up when the world tries to knock you down.
If you take one thing from our story, let it be this: never let anyone, not even your own children, convince you that experience is worthless or that age equals irrelevance. We're older now, yes, but we're also wiser, tougher, and more united than we've ever been. That's not weakness. That's power.
Take care of your parents, because one day you'll be old too. And when that day comes, you'll want someone who remembers that you're still a person deserving of dignity and respect. Build that relationship now, while there's still time. Because time, unlike money, can never be earned back once it's lost. If you're watching this and you have aging parents,
call them. Visit them. Make sure they're protected.
Because one day, you'll be old too. And you'll want someone who remembers you're still a person.
Take care of your family the right way. Thank you for listening to our story. Subscribe for more true stories. Share if this touched you. What would you have done in our situation? Forgiven immediately or fought back? Let us know below. And if this story resonated with you, please share it. Elder financial abuse is more common than people realize. Together, we can raise awareness.